I do have handouts, or one handout. And I actually asked to be on your agenda today because we are applying for a grant, Community Development Block Grant for housing rehab. One of the requirements for the grant funder is that we do get in front of real estate professionals and other people in the industry and discuss fair housing. So I'm glad that it's being recorded. I'll actually have a record of it, and the sign-in sheet will be provided for me. None of this is news to you. There's nothing new and exciting with fair housing, but it is important that people are aware of it. If any of you aren't aware of fair housing, then you must have been asleep in that class, because I'm pretty sure it's required for all realtors to be familiar with it. But I am going to go over it briefly, and then I can talk a little bit about some of the programs that we have going right now. There are laws that protect fair housing. We have local ordinances, state law, and federal law. Under the Fair Housing Act, it's unlawful to discriminate. All the reasons are listed there, but I want to go down to the protected classes: race, color, age, national origin, religion, gender, familial status, and disabilities. Recently, Winton, I can't recall his last name, he's with Community Legal Services, and he is the fair housing person for our area. He covers 4 counties or more. And he spoke at the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting a couple months ago. And what he shared with us was these things, but also what are they doing to further fair housing, because it's important. HUD is looking at this consistently in every monitoring and auditing that I have. This is something they're looking at. And if complaints do come in and get to the county level, Brad Thorpe, our county administrator, is the fair housing contact person. The complaint would go to him. He'd most likely reassign it to me, and then I would investigate and look further into it. But what Winton shared with us is that they are actually funded to go out and ensure that fair housing practices are occurring with realtors and property managers and people in your industry. And in Citrus County, he did have good news that there really hadn't been any big gotcha moments. But in Marion County, they have had cases and settlements and so forth, fines and fees, for people who are discriminating against people with disabilities. So he said it was surprising. Historically, it had been racial, and now they're seeing with disabilities. But he did say there is one race that is being discriminated against, and it would be people maybe from Afghan or Iraq or things of that nature, Muslim, that sort of thing. He said that's the other thing that they're seeing. And they're looking at it closely. The days are gone when you can kind of get away with that, oh, I'm just going to rent to a single person with no kids, and I know they have a great income and so forth. Those days are gone, and it's being looked at, and people are calling and reporting it, and it's being followed through on. On the back of the handout, I gave you understanding the importance of fair lending, and this is really important as well. You may or may not be a lender, but you may know some of your clients that have been discriminated against with their lender, and that's something that you should be responsible to help them with or report or make them aware of, that possibly they've been discriminated against. I haven't seen it directly. There are people that apply to buy homes that we have, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, and I have questioned it on occasion, why this person's able to get this type of loan and this other person with basically the same scenario on paper isn't, and usually it gets explained away sufficiently, but it brings it to the attention of that lender or broker that we are looking at that, and we want to see fair practices throughout the industry. So does anyone have any questions about fair housing? And everybody practices fair housing?
Absolutely.
Believes in it, gets it? That's good. The grant that we're applying for, the Community Development Block Grant, when that is ready to rock and roll, it'll be $750,000. I hope we get it. We're competing throughout the state for those funds. It's through Department of Economic Opportunity with the state. We have gotten this grant many times in the past, and we just closed one out about less than a year ago. So as soon as you get closed out, you can apply for another one. So that's what we're doing. Typically, we'll serve 10 to 14 households. We can do home rehab, or we can actually demolish and replace. And this is for people who are up to 80% of AMI, so it's low income. We have to put a set aside of at least 4 units has to go towards very low income, which is the 50% of AMI. So if you know of anybody who needs help repairing their home and so on and so forth, and you see us advertise that we're doing intake on applications, please let them know. We often serve people who are on disability or Social Security or elderly and so forth, people who don't have reserves and can't build up reserves to do their roof or flooring or things of that nature. The last round that we did, there were 32 applications, all ended up being eligible except for one, and we were able to serve 13 of them. At least 70% of them were elderly. And if we hadn't assisted them, their homes would have fallen to disrepair, blight, taken down the values in the neighborhood that they lived in, which we don't want to see. And they probably would end up in an assisted living facility, which we all pay for. We all pay for that with our tax dollars when that happens. So keeping people in their homes and keeping their homes at a higher level, a higher standard quality, that's what we want to see. So maybe these programs don't directly benefit you, but indirectly they certainly can, because we want to see high property values. The other program that you all should be interested in and be aware of, I hope, is the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. Right now we're totally targeting the older section of Beverly Hills, and I understand a lot of people don't want to live there, but there are plenty of people who are first-time home buyers that that's an appropriate place to start. And what we've done is, we have a buyer back there.
No, actually, the next house that's next door was purchased by the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, and they leveled it, and they're putting a brand new house next to mine. So I'm very thankful that Neighborhood Stabilization had come in, because if it was not, it would have been a shelter structure, because it was a fire-damaged home. So I'm thankful that on my street that happened. So it was a great program, and I'm an expert neighbor at one of those, so thank you.
All right, thank you. I actually have to correct you a little bit. That's actually the SHIP program that's doing that demolition and replacement. And that home had sat for 2 years, and the gentleman who had it was in a homeless shelter for those 2 years. And Dwayne Zipper with the PATH had helped him and brought him to me his case. And when he finally had disability income coming in, and he's a very nice gentleman, he owns the property, it's not one of the counties. He is well deserving and so forth, and he was just going to give the property away to Habitat or one of the other nonprofits because he didn't want to pay taxes on this burned out house. So we were able to get him through the SHIP program of rebuilding it. He's going to stay in his home and not be homeless and so on and so forth. It definitely will help values in that neighborhood. So
I personally have seen many homes that have been given a facelift in Beverly Hills through this neighborhood stabilization that's been going on, and I am very, very excited about it for the Beverly Hills neighborhood. It's just really making a huge difference, and it's just making it nice for everybody else around them as well. So, I mean, I think it's a big plus, and I'm really happy to see them doing more of that.
the program is working. We're starting to see the values go up for some of
They
those
really are.
those neighborhoods. You know, it's unfortunate that we can't just do a whole street at a time, but people live there and own them, and that's okay. But we have 5 for sale right now, and 3 under rehab, and I think we have about 20 in that older section of Beverly Hills. We've sold probably 10 to date. And historically, we were able to buy them around the $20,000 mark, rehab them. We're putting $35,000, $45,000 into them. Not something an investor would do, not something I would do personally. However, that's what the dollars are for. We can then sell them for fair market value or the amount that we have in them, whichever's less. So we're selling them at, we just sold one on DeSoto for $70,000, which is huge. So, thank you, everybody. Fair housing.